What you just saw was created entirely from scratch using nothing but a controller and a PlayStation. How is that possible? Well, I want to take you through that process in this video. I used a game called Dreams. Dreams lets you make pretty much anything you can think of, from video games to music to short animations like this. Sure, there are limitations, but with enough creativity, you can work around most of them. So here's how I recreated the T-Rex breakout scene from Jurassic Park. I started off by making a new project. Luckily, I already have most of the models I need to recreate the scene. If you're curious how I have these models, I'll explain that later on in the video. So let's bring in this fence model, a nice ground texture, and some realistic foliage. Nothing you see is imported. Everything is created entirely from scratch using the sculpting tools in Dreams. Now, I technically attempted to remake this scene before, but with some interesting results. That was over a year ago, and I probably only spent an hour or two on it. This time I want it to be as close as possible to the original. Before I bring in the T-Rex or start animating, I want to make sure I have the right layout. It's not easy to try to recreate the exact look of a scene. Everything has to line up and match perfectly. Just getting the right layout took a lot more time than I thought it would. After adding the track and cars, I added the foliage and trees. However, as you'll see later, most of these have to be moved around to look more accurate to the film. In making this, I also wanted to showcase how the T-Rex breakout scene actually works. Now, it's not really communicated that well in the film, but after looking at this production sketch of how the set actually looks, the scene starts to make a little bit more sense. So I've recreated how that looks in Dreams. You can see here where the T-Rex would walk out, and then where it would push the car over the edge. Next up is the lighting. In my opinion, this is one of the most important parts when it comes to realism. You can have all of the best textures and models in the world, but if the lighting doesn't look right, the whole thing falls apart. Luckily, Dreams has a great lighting engine that could lead to some pretty realistic scenes. Just like the trees and fence, the lighting has to line up with the original shot just right. Once I was relatively happy with the lighting, I added in the T-Rex. Things are already starting to look pretty good, but there's still a lot of work to be done. I then added the wires on the fence. These were done using paint. This is different from sculptures in Dreams, because paint can be bent and given physical properties. Paint can also be animated and used to create realistic rain effects like this. Before I start animating, I want to add a few effects to help sell the atmosphere. Here I'm just adding some fog and then moving it around the scene to try to sell that rain effect a little bit better. Then I added some details to the fence, and with all that out of the way, I was finally ready to start animating. Well, almost. The T-Rex appeared to be way too small. It had to be able to reach the top of the fence and bite down like it does in the movie. This was a bit of a headache to figure out, but after a ton of adjustments, it was finally ready for animations. Animating in Dreams is fairly straightforward. Just take a keyframe, record the position of something, and then add another keyframe of the position you want to move it to. You can also choose different ways to blend the keyframes to get just the right look for your animation. I like to divide my animations into several different layers of keyframes that each record a different part of the body. For example, one keyframe layer records the head and body movement, and another records the legs and feet movements. This helps to make sure it doesn't look like it's just moving from one position to the other. Instead, each part is moving at different times to create a more natural looking animation. The animation itself was probably one of the most time-consuming parts of the whole process, because I was trying to match it to the original as best I could. After a while, I got to this. It's pretty rough, but it's a good start. And the wires still had to be animated, so I kept working on it. After smoothing out the movements, adding a bit of camera shake, and animating some of the wires, I got to this. Again, it's not perfect, but it's getting there. It took some time before I was able to figure out a way for the wires to snap in a convincing way. In the end, I just copied the wires to the other side of the fence and made them invisible. Once the T-Rex bit down, I would make them visible again and then animate them individually. Getting the wires to snap realistically out of the Rex's mouth was also difficult, but I think I was able to get the effect I was looking for. Next, I added the lightning effect. This was definitely the most straightforward part of the animation. I just took a spotlight and made it turn on and off to match the film. After that, I went and added some rain effects to the Ford Explorers. Again, I mainly just used paint to get this result. Next, I added some splash effects for when the Tyrannosaur takes a step. I wasn't 100% happy with how this turned out compared to the rest of the animation, but I couldn't figure out a better way to do it at the time. Everything in Dreams is rendered in real time, so I was able to play around by adding a playable character to the scene. I decided to try out my vintage camera puppet and see how things looked. After messing around with that, I added some small white dots along a few parts of the T-Rex to fake specular highlights. I used this same technique when I remade the T-Rex roar. Most of these effects are barely visible in the finished product, but again, I wanted to match the film as close as I could. Next, I added some subtle animations to the low detail characters in the vehicles, and with that, the animation was finalized. All that was left to do was hit play. But there was an issue. See these little artifacts around the Tyrannosaur's neck? Yeah, I had it until that moment. Luckily, I was able to figure it out right away. I just took a text gadget, made the background super low opacity, and placed it in front of the camera. And just like that, it was fixed. I didn't know why, but text gadgets have some weird properties to them, so I didn't question it. And I almost forgot to mention, in Dreams you can play and create all of your scenes in VR, and it's absolutely terrifying. The only thing I didn't post was darken the scene a bit and lower the frame rate. Everything else was done in Dreams. Here's one last look at the final shot. This was definitely one of my favorite recreations I've done yet, and probably the most challenging. But it was fun. I've never done a video like this before, but if you like it and want to see more, let me know in the comments and I will certainly make more of this. And if you're curious about how I got these assets, me and a few of my friends have been hard at work for the past 2 years creating a Jurassic Park fan game called Jurassic Park Operations. A trailer will be releasing to this channel soon, so look forward to that. Before I go, I want to show you some never-before-seen footage of the first 2 minutes of gameplay from Jurassic Park Operations. This has been Krenautican, and I'll see you next time.